has happened in the last 11 to 12 months. Mr. Prime Minister, let us start off by looking at the Ministry of Education and what you were able to achieve, your government was able to achieve within the whole education sector, bearing in mind that people are talking now. I was in St. George's yesterday, and a parent came up to me and she said, Kem Jones, we're happy my child is able to go on to secondary school because she has either a girl or a boy who were not able to go on because they said, well, she kind of slow or he kind of slow. It's a different policy direction of the government. Tell us about that. Why the NDC administration decided we're going full in with universal education for all.
Right. Well, I want to start by saying the fact that the child is kind of slow is all the more reason why the child need access to education, and all the more reason why we should not be denying the child access to education. Because I think if we are going to move Grenada forward, if we are going to lift people out of poverty, if we're going to serve the underserved and the underprivileged, the key vehicle for doing that is education. So we should ensure that our education policy gives persons who otherwise traditionally have been excluded, either because oftentimes, and I would call it perceived slowness, that in fact they do have the same access and perhaps even more access than for those who get it quickly and for those who may traditionally style as being bright. But more fundamentally, we view education as an absolute right. You know, Grenada doesn't have a lot of significant mineral wealth. You know, it's still debatable how much oil and gas we have, and the rest of it is really the sea and the soil. And so human resources is the single most important attribute that we have. And when you look at countries that have really developed, especially those that have no particular significant advantage, it has been investing in their people. And the best way to do that is through education. So we cannot have a situation where an 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old does not go to secondary school, because we will be condemning them to a life of failure. In an exceptional or rare case, they will make it. So we absolutely have to give all our young people, all our children, the right to education. And that, those are goals that have been established, you know, decades ago. And so it's difficult for me to accept, you know, as we are heading into a 50th anniversary of independence, that we would want to maintain a system where we exclude hundreds of children from having access to secondary school education. So that's the first thing. But I want to jump right back to the beginning. Recall that we got into office in June, and June is obviously the end of a school year, June, first week of July. And one of the things we talked about as our commitment to ensuring that there's access to education was to ensure that the school fees, which oftentimes is another barrier to our children entering and remaining in school, was removed, and that those costs were absorbed by the government. It seems a long time ago,
Yes.
and I think many persons have already forgotten that. And again, there was a bit of a reaction to it, but we wanted to ensure that we were not preventing our children from accessing school simply because their parents can't pay registration fees or can't pay $150 or whatever other miscellaneous charges that comes with attending school. And so we would have recalled removed all fees from pre-primary, primary, and secondary schools. And we obviously have TAMCC to deal with, so there's a commitment going forward as well to ensure that there is no barrier to accessing TAMCC because of financial restrictions or inability to pay tuition.
And beautiful because the Minister of Education actually spoke about TAMCC to be the next target.
Yes.
Right. But, you know, the NDC actually prioritized education because when, in fact, one of the first announcement you made at that swearing-in ceremony was to return the dock salaries to the teachers, the hard-working teachers. And that actually created a really good climate, a conducive climate for learning, and also for the teachers to do the extracurricular activities. Talk to us about that and more, because we hear about TVET, we hear about TVET being introduced at upper primary to secondary school level. We hear about the 13% for teachers, you know, over the three-year period. Talk to us about education, because history, Grenadian history
Yes.
being reintroduced. Talk to us about education, because it seems as though the NDC has always focused on education once in government. We know about the free textbook program, the free back to school voucher program. Tell us about those programs.
Right, and you know, and I want to start again with the payment of the dock salaries for the teachers. We didn't campaign and we didn't say we were going to do it,
Right.
but it was absolutely the right thing to do. I mean, the salaries had been negotiated and agreed. The government had the money, the capacity, and the ability to pay the teachers what was agreed. So this wasn't a case where you were negotiating and there's no money.
Right.
This was agreed, settled, done, and dusted. And then simply from the perspective of power play, you have our teachers who take care of the nation's young people. Because it's not just education, it is actually looking after them while they're in their custodial care. And you have them marching up and down in the hot sun, in the rain, complaining and begging for what they are entitled to. So we knew we could not go into government and continue this unnecessary war, this unnecessary attack on our teachers. And so the decision was taken that we needed to demonstrate that we are a different government, that we are a government that cared about the persons that we worked with, that we recognize the importance of the teachers and the role they play in the education for students and frankly in the fabric of the society. So the decision to pay the doc salary was made in that context. And I think it signaled early to everyone, the public workers in general, that this was a government that was going to take a different approach, that this was a government that was going to be pro-workers, and we've maintained that consistently. So the payment of the doc salaries to the teachers and other public workers, because it's not just teachers whose salaries were docked.
Yes.
We obviously announced that very early. That was paid. It demonstrated, I think, our commitment to honoring our words and to doing the things we said we will do. But there's something else I want to mention. There hasn't been a lot of attention paid to that. The TA Marshall Community College also had significant industrial action taking place when we, during the campaign and when we got into office.
And in fact, I was going to come to that. Beautiful.
Right. In fact, you would be passing the roundabout
Yes.
in Tantin and you would see the teachers outside and
Yes.
other employees with placards and so on constantly. We have settled this matter. Right, and perhaps we settled it too quietly,
Right.
you know, and we haven't beaten our chest about it. But this matter, by the end of the year, we had settled the matter, we had paid the errors that were due to the teachers, and as you can see, TAMCC is now back on track.
So tell me this without cutting because the TAMCC issue was some $4 million. That was paid.
That was
You all entered into an agreement to pay, different tranches over a period of time.
Yes.
You're saying to me by the end of the year that should be over.
No, I'm saying by the end of 2022, that was done.
The money is
The
paid.
money is end of 2022, so within 6 months, end of 2022 into January of 2023, we paid and settled those sums, and that's what I mean by perhaps we don't blow our trumpets sufficiently.
I want to
enough.
agree.
So it is not the end of 2023. It is
Yes.
already foregone and accomplished.
Beautiful.
Fact. So that's one of the accomplishments we were able to achieve. And again, as a result of that, the industrial peace, the industrial calm, and the productivity that we need in our education institutions was normalized, and we were able to begin in earnest the work we need to do to begin addressing education.
Let's go back to the reintroduction of Grenadian history
Absolutely.
at primary and secondary, schools generally, because that has been something not included in our schools, and people have been talking about that over and over. This is a big thing.
It's a massive thing. If you don't teach your history, then who are you?
Right.
Right? And if you are a sovereign state and in a small island that has had some significant accomplishments, as we said, we have punched significantly above our weight. If we don't tell our young people that, if they don't know that, we don't engender in them a sense of pride, a sense of nationalism, a sense of civic duty, then they will grow up not wanting to be part of the society. They'll grow up wanting to migrate. They'll grow up not understanding the rich history that Grenada has. And it's also important to point out that we have significant authors who write about our history. And so we need to be honoring them and their work and their intellectual property by having those books and those texts available to our students in school, so that the next generation of Grenadians also want to tell and write and celebrate Grenada's history. And I say this because Grenada has accomplished things that no other CARICOM country has accomplished, both in terms of our political history,
Yes.
our economic history, our sporting history, and in many other facets. So I think it's important for us to appreciate that history, to appreciate that we've always led. If you look at us within the OECS, we're the first OECS country to get independence. Many of our young people don't know that, but the seat of the OECS was in Grenada. The capital of the OECS was in Grenada. The OECS was being governed from Grenada. The Supreme Court, the OECS Supreme Court, for example, only moved to St. Lucia as a result of the revolution, the PRG period. So we need to understand, celebrate, and appreciate our history. And I think I would put it this way: when Grenada is doing well, the OECS is doing well, and CARICOM is doing well.
Beautiful. Let us also look at the kind of investment in the public library, because it ties in with education and access, because there are some people who just don't have the computer at home or the internet or books. You budgeted, or your government budgeted, some $800,000 for that purpose. But we are not only hearing about St. George's, we are hearing about Grenville, right? St. Andrew. So you're not leaving out the folks on that side of the country. Talk to us about that. Why is it so important to modernize and bring back our library with computers, with the technology, not forgetting the books, but with that kind of, upgrade? Talk to us about
So
that.
again, I think a library is one symbolic of a country's focus on education. Two, a library is also a meeting place for young people. You see, education is not always a situation where I sit with a book or an instructor. Education is about interaction, playing, exchanging,
Yes.
learning from each other, giving people a sense of place where there's community, right? And for me, as a student as presentation at Brothers College, that was part and parcel of the education I got from being able to go to the library. But we also have to blend the history with the modernity. Now, for me, I grew up with encyclopedias. My child doesn't know what an encyclopedia is.
Right.
So we need to be able to bring them to a library and say, this is how knowledge was stored. This is how vast amounts of knowledge was prepared by hard copy, painstakingly in books, so that they understand what an encyclopedia is. They get the feel and look of it. And to explain to them all that has happened is that knowledge has been now transferred to the cloud. And you have it readily accessible on a tablet, on a phone, on a computer, which obviously makes it more efficient because you have access to it wherever you are. But as you pointed out, there are still significant pockets within our population who may not even have electricity, much less access to the internet. And we need to be able to find common gathering facilities throughout our urban centers, throughout our villages where they can access that. So it's not just the library in St. George's, it's also the libraries in St. Andrews. And it doesn't have to be big, massive buildings.
Right.
Small libraries in villages where there's access to internet, where people can donate books, where children can meet, gather, where we can do remedial classes for students who may have issues with numeracy or literacy. That is part and parcel of demonstrating to our young people our commitment to them, to give them a sense of pride, to give them a sense of hope, and to not just pay lip service to the idea that the young people are the next generation of Grenada.
And we will come to the community centers because I know you have been, out there not only talking the talk, but painting, walking the walk, and walking the walk.
Yes.
We're going to talk about that in a while, yeah? Let us kind of recap, because I think people need to know about what really took place over the last 12 months in education. We talked about it, but let me summarize it, because I'm here kind of recording, because there are people out there who will still say, well, they ain't do nothing, I ain't see what they have done. We talked about the doc salaries being paid,
Yes.
some $1.2 million or so. We talked also about Grenadian history being returned in our upper primary to secondary school, TVET, that's Bravo, where people are able to, be more technical, because not everybody is into the biology and the physics and so on. You could use your hands to do stuff. That's great. We also spoke about the whole issue of CPEA. Students are able to go straight on to secondary school, universal access. We also spoke about parents not having to find that money to get that child to the secondary school, get that child into primary, pre-primary, and so on. That is wonderful. We also see a number of schools being refurbished,
Yes.
renovated.
Renovated.
That is significant, because I remember going into a particular school and I looked at the staff room, I looked at the restroom, and I say, wow, please, we need some intervention. How can somebody come and do something to transform that place so that learning could could happen? Tell us about that, the injection in there for some of those schools.
Right. So there's significant work taking place throughout the island, and I will probably be a little biased and talk about my alma mater,
Yes.
St. David's Roman Catholic School. The school had not been maintained. And so when the contract was given to the contractor, they thought they were changing the roof, and then they found out that you had significant more work to do. In fact, the entire school almost had to be rebuilt. Right. What was left was really the shell. And so we had to scramble, first of all, to ensure that, notwithstanding this unforeseen situation, that the children still had school. And credit to the community of St. David's, Bellevue, Rukane, Belle Isle, volunteers came out, took the community center, which itself was in a significant state of disrepair, and made the community center ready so that students could start school unhindered.
Beautiful.
We then had to construct temporary facilities at the Bellevue playing field to house the entire school, so that we can get the school ready for this September. So that work is almost complete. We expect that by July the school will be completely ready, and that the students will be able to go back to schools at their original venue. And that has happened throughout the length and breadth of Grenada. But I just want to go back on the TVET a little, to emphasize that we only now starting. Right, we are only now starting because we have already, for example, launched a pilot at the Woburn Primary School. It is critical. We intend to partner with NULO. We intend to partner with the National Lotteries Authority so that we can get the funding to create the centers of excellence throughout particularly the rural communities.
Yes.
Right? Because that traditionally is where a lot of our skills tradesmen and women come from. And we want to emphasize that we do not intend to leave St. Andrew, St. Mark, St. John, and St. Patrick behind. Because we
And
know,
Carriacou.
and P.T. Martinique and Carriacou, because we know there's a significant drift
Yes.
to the south, and we have to stymie that. And let us not forget, in record time, we were able to negotiate and sign off on a 4.5% salary increase for our teachers. And I want to commend the teachers for taking the leadership role in record time, signing the collective bargaining agreement and the fringe benefits with the government, so that we are not in a situation where we are always paying retroactively. You know, there's a tradition
Yes.
with governments where 10 years after you work, you're finally getting the salary increase when it's probably too late and the cost of living would have already eaten it. So we are at a situation where our collective bargaining agreement is current, and so that the government knows exactly what its budgetary allocations are going to be for the next 3 years for salaries for teachers.
So the only, without cutting you here, the only union, or let me say, the only two unions still, either waiting to come forward or waiting for something to cause them to come forward is the Public Workers Union and TAU, because I think TAU represents about 51 or so workers within the public service.
The TAU represents probably, if not the smallest percentage, but it's TAU and Bank and General Workers Union.
Together.
They represent a very small percentage.
Right.
The Public Workers Union is single-handedly the majority union in the
Right.
public service and accounts for as much as 42% of all workers. So it's really, it's to move this, it is really the Public Workers Union that has to really sign. I want to take the opportunity, in fact, to encourage the leadership of the union, because I'm satisfied that the members of the Public Workers Union know that this government is for the workers, that we've done everything to support, encourage, and address the issues facing public workers, and will continue to do so. And so we want to encourage them, to encourage the leadership to do the right thing for them.
Yes.
By agreeing to the 4.45 that the government has offered,
And I
so
saw-
that we can sign this off and move.
I saw Prison only recently signed on, which is
Prison
great.
has also signed.
Police, yes.
Police have also signed. Obviously, the teachers have also signed.
Yes.
And the Grenada Manual, Maritime and Intellectual Workers Union have also signed.
Beautiful.
So the majority of unions, the majority of workers have already signed and are getting their salary increases. And I will go there, and they are being paid
Right.
bi-monthly.
And I don't know if you saw that petition. There is a petition in circulation by the workers themselves saying, look, we urge the leadership of the Public Workers Union to just sign, because we believe that the government is acting in good faith, and it's a pro-worker government who really wants to see that our communities are transformed, that our families are transformed, and that prosperity come to the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and P.T. Martinique. So, I mean, that appeal, I hope my good friend Brian Grimes and the others, DC Hazard, can follow suit. But let's move to health. Let's move to health, because I think it's very important. I could recall going to the Westerhall Medical Station and looking at that whole dilapidated building and facility. I realized you did some work there.
Yes.
I also had that opportunity to go to Good Hope. I realized you did some work there. I went to Victoria. I realized you did some work there. You're doing a lot of work as it relates to the facility. Talk to us about that. And not only that, let's move to the nurses too, because they're happy. I only met a nurse about 3 days ago saying to me, hey, we have $500 now. We got from the NDC administration this honorarium, not somebody going to the United States and say, well, we're some chicken tea for pilfering from some facility in the hospital. Talk to us about the whole priority that the administration is placing on health care, health and wellness, not just health care, but health and wellness. Speak to us about that.
Well, we're a government that listens to people. And I think if you do almost any poll, anywhere in the diaspora, in Grenada, among any different groups or categories of Grenadians, the state of our healthcare is unquestionably the issue that they are most concerned about. And so we have prioritized healthcare as our number one agenda. Now, I will start by saying improving and addressing the challenges within our healthcare sector is not going to be easy. And so I want to say to the public, they need to be patient with us. But as you pointed out, we've already taken decisive and demonstrated action to address, first, a lot of our primary healthcare facilities. Because
Yes.
again, it's to the physical facilities throughout the primary healthcare sector in Grenada, because we also want to emphasize the need for primary healthcare and the need for preventative healthcare, so that persons don't in fact become ill or sick. We also recognize, again, I think the former administration had this approach where it always seemed to be attacking the public workers.
Yes.
You know, making derogatory comments, generalizations, etc. And I don't see how that could be conducive to an environment where you're going to build the country. You can't be shooting yourself in the foot, because you have to depend on the public workers to deliver the government services. And so, again, we felt it necessary, recognizing the challenges that our nurses have faced, recognizing, as you said, the attacks that have been made upon them, recognizing also that you can't blame people if
Yes.
they are not treated well and they look to go elsewhere. That we needed to signal, both from a symbolic perspective, but from a real substantive financial perspective as well, to our nurses, that we value your services. We appreciate the plight and the challenges you've had, particularly coming out of COVID-19. And therefore, we wanted to do whatever we can within our limited resources to be able to send that signal to them. And so the honorarium was really symbolic, but obviously a substantial financial honorarium for nurses.
And we need to say here, well, I should say here, it is $500 per month,
Per month.
all the way up
All
to,
the way up to the
and
end of
maybe it might even be after 2023.
Well, certainly we will look to I mean, this is not a situation where you give and you take back. What we want to obviously do is to find more long-term improved
Yes.
terms and conditions for all healthcare workers, because I
Yes.
will say this as well, our doctors also, their pay is awful, right? So I don't want to sit here and pretend that everything is honky-dory with the pays that state and government doctors work for. It is shameful, actually, right? And and just looking at what is involved, the sort of pressure, the hours of work, we have to have those conversations and explain to the public why it is we need to pay our doctors, our nurses, and our other healthcare technicians and professionals better if we expect and want them to deliver better healthcare services. So that's part of the discussion that we have to have, and it requires what I call a change in our approach to healthcare, which is it is expenditure driven only. The government has a budget and we simply spend, and we're not recovering any revenues. So we have tourists, as I said, who come here and get free healthcare. We have people who have health insurance and they can claim on the health insurance, and we don't have mechanisms in place so people can
Well,
claim
let's
on health insurance.
let's move to the national health insurance, because that is important. Because I think the previous administration, they were talking, maybe they started something, but it never gotten anywhere off the ground and so on. Tell us about that. What's the intention
Right.
of the
So
government?
we budgeted $2 million for national health insurance this year, and we have spent the last 6 months in intensive discussions back and forth with the JIPA team and Dr. Kesternet, which is the contractor that the prior government had engaged to begin the process of dealing with the national health insurance. Now, in fairness to JIPA, they did extensive work. There were significant interruptions as a result of COVID-19 because of focus shift to that. But we have re-engaged them, and as I said, we've spent a lot of time. Dr. Ned has been here several times. In fact, he should be on island right now. And the hope is that we will make effective as of 1st June a contract with them, a supplemental contract to continue the national health insurance work. We are estimating that between 18 to 24 months. In fact, Dr. Ned had pushed for 18 months. We asked for 24 because we want to be realistic
Yes.
in terms of the design, in terms of the time it will take to get this going. But we are very, very keen to push this because it is crucial, especially for what I call major medical issues, because you can't save enough money for that. And usually it's unexpected. And when it happens, it either bankrupts you if you didn't manage to save, or you simply can't afford it. And that's why you see in many instances people who have major medical issues are going around Grenada,
With the
on the
motorcade.
motorcades, on the drives, the begging, and so on, simply because we have not insured for what is almost an inevitability. You know, we insure our cars, we insure our homes, we insure our lives,
Yes.
right? Because you die and then you want to leave something for your spouse or your children or what have you. Yet still we do not insure for health insurance, for health issues which are almost guaranteed to happen, particularly as we get older.
Let's move to the Climate Smart Teaching Hospital, because people who know me very well, who followed me over the many years, they would tell you that I have been an advocate for that. Because when I see students or Grenadians or folks who come here, study at St. George's University, and in the last 2 years, they pack and they go to the United Kingdom or they go to the United States, that's money that can stay right here in Grenada. And I've always said, once you have a teaching hospital facility, specialists will come, people are going to get the opportunity to do major surgeries. I mean, things will be nice again. I saw you and the team looking at a particular plot of land or acres of land in the Calivini area.
Yes.
Talk to us about that, and why is it important to have such a facility in Grenada?
Right. Well, I think let me say our government is, if there's one thing, above all, that we are committed to achieving is the building of the teaching hospital, because we see it as fundamental to the future economic viability of Grenada and to the healthcare of the nation, as the airport has proven to be in terms of a gateway to Grenada. And it comes back to the same question of the revenue-driven model that I spoke about to healthcare. We have to have a facility that, one, as you say, allows the doctors who are going to leave, those who have been trained at SGU, to get the opportunity to do their rotations in Grenada. If that happens right away, Grenadians themselves have far more doctors and trainee doctors available to them. So right away, the accessibility to healthcare improves dramatically. Second, I think we all accept Grenada is a fantastic place for vocation. What better place to engage in elective surgery or surgical or medical procedures, knowing that you can recover on Brandon's Beach, you can go to Annandale Waterfall, you can go to Market Waterfall, you can go up in Granitang and relax, the peace, the serenity, all of that comes with that. So we are quite clear that if we build this hospital, let me rephrase, when we build this hospital to the standard and the quality it is, that it is far easier to fly a surgeon into Grenada than it is to fly Grenadians out who are sick, who then have to get hotels, aftercare, transportation, all of that. Millions of dollars.
Yes.
I saw one study which suggested as much as $70 million every year is spent by Grenadians leaving Grenada to seek healthcare outside of Grenada. Now, whether the study is accurate or not, I think almost every Grenadian knows a person or two who have left Grenada to seek medical attention outside of Grenada. Whether it's with the support of our friends in Cuba, or whether it's Trinidad or Barbados or North America, millions of dollars are spent, not just on the healthcare, the transportation, the travel, the hotels, etc., the food, all of that can stay in Grenada. And so even if we fly specialists in, and I have no doubt they will want to come, because who wouldn't want to practice medicine in a beautiful place like this? To me, we will be giving us an opportunity to transform and guarantee not just healthcare, but all of the things that comes with motorism. Because again, for wealthy tourists, you want to go to a destination where if you're scuba diving or you did something, you were in a motor vehicle accident, you're assured that there's a certain level of medical care that you can get on island, even if it means things like stabilizing you, being able to subsequently fly out and so on. Currently, we don't have that. And so to me, it is absolutely vital that we pursue this project. And it's regrettable, Ken, because significant work was done by the NDC administration in 2008-2013 on this project. Significant work. And all the NNP administration had to do was frankly take the project and proceed with it. And so they've put Grenada back 10 years. Right? This project should have happened 10 years ago. And I'm sure it would have transformed the economic lives and the state of healthcare in Grenada.
Let's talk about the doctors, particularly those who complete their training at SGU.
Yes.
Normally, they come here, they get that training, they pick up and they go.
Yes.
But I was speaking to 2 or 3 of them, and they indicated if they can get the incentive where they can purchase a piece of land, they can raise their family here, they're not bothered. In other words, no immigration person coming to say, well, next month you have to leave or you have to come and renew. Tell us about the government's plans as it relates to putting the incentives on the table and say, hey, you could stay here, you can raise your family here, you're a doctor, you're a professional, we need you, you can serve our communities, you can do well here. Talk to us about that.
Well, I think there has to be a specific plan that targets the alumni of SGU. I mean, SGU over its 40-year history has produced hundreds of doctors, some of whom are the best in their field worldwide. And so we have to specifically target them and ask them to come back. In fact, many of them are prepared to come back. There's one doctor right now that we're in the process of signing an MOU to, who has spent his own money to rent premises at GIDC, who spent his own money to bring equipment in to furnish that equipment. The plan is to open an OBGYN clinic here and to offer free or discounted medical services, particularly to a woman. Right? And frankly, this was an offer made to the prior administration that they simply did nothing about. So from the time I heard about it, well, you could imagine I'm happy to run the doctor down wherever he is to say to him, come here, we want to get this done. And again, this is someone who bought a property in Grenada, who got married 2 weeks ago in Grenada because he loves Grenada. His daughter is also an alumni of SU. So it tells you when you get to Grenada, people fall in love with it.
Yes.
But we have not tapped into, because there's been no policy to specifically address that, even though many of these doctors are ready, willing, and able to come back, and in many instances serve on a volunteer basis. Many of them have medical inventions, patents, etc., that they can bring to Grenada and bring not just the practice of medicine, but the business and some of the industrial designs, concept, etc., and have production occur here. So there is no doubt that the medical biohealth industry, this is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and we are missing out on it because we have not put the infrastructure in place. We have not set the policies in place to address that. So the building of the hospital is just one part of that, but the entire fiscal incentives, the framework, will also be brought to bear. And we haven't touched the diaspora.
Right.
Because we know that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Grenadians who want to come home to retire or buy homes, even if they spend 6 months here, especially during the winter. But they are discouraged by the state of our healthcare. So just having that facility alone means many of our doctors, there are many Grenadian doctors in the diaspora. So even if it's on a 6 months rotating basis, even if it's on a 1 month rotating basis, if the facilities are there, they would be happy to come home again and lend their services to Grenadians, in many instances for free. Because when they're successful, they want to give back, and we have not, again, with the facilities not being available, it's difficult for us to be able to attract them. So we have to have deliberate policies. One, that allows our diaspora to come home and engage in a rotational basis where they serve our people. Two, to deliberately target the SGU alumni, both on a rotational basis and on a permanent basis, to come back to Grenada and to give back. In many instances, they're willing to do so for free. But we also have to have this culture of receiving them, of being receptive, because oftentimes there's a culture of almost pushing back from people when we get help. And one of the things, I'm sure you've heard the complaints, there are many Grenadians, for example, who want to buy medical supplies, who want to send equipment home, and they feel like they've been pushed around or given the red tape to not address that. One of the things we've asked the Ministry of Health to do is to establish a specific desk that deals with donations, that you can guide people to say, this is what we want, these are the things we don't have sufficient of, ensuring that people also recognize that things have expiry dates and you want to buy them with sufficient lead time and those kinds of things, so that people feel that we truly appreciate the significant help that they've given. And there's a database already. There were significant doctors who came here during COVID-19, and they're simply waiting to be given the opportunity to come back and to continue serving.
While you're on that note, we must commend our Grenadian brothers and sisters, and I've been speaking about that in the last couple of weeks, for seeing the need to, even if they're out there working their tail out, to get medication, get equipment, and send back home. And while we see the opposition complaining, grinding, groaning, and bawling, screaming aloud about shortage of medication, and in fact we're going to speak about that momentarily, because the NDC seem to be about just fixing the thing and not complaining, getting the thing done, because ultimately that is what the Grenadian people want. We are so accustomed to this complaining, and there are so many people in the complaining industry, and we see the opposition in that particular corner. Speak to us about that, because only recently we heard the screaming and the bawling, and then within no time the Minister of Health came out and said, look, this thing is fixed. Why complain?
Yes, well, normally I'm not one to criticize other people.
Right.
I tend to just move on. But from where I sit, the opposition has absolutely no moral authority to speak about healthcare in Grenada. None. The opposition leader has been Prime Minister for almost 23 years. Ask him, what did he do for the healthcare sector in Grenada, other than characterize our healthcare workers as thief and chicken thief and whatnot? Absolutely nothing. They presided over the rot. So they have no moral authority to speak about healthcare. He jumps on a plane to get his medical treatment elsewhere. How many Grenadians can do so? Virtually none. So this conversation about healthcare, frankly, is not a conversation they should be engaging in, because they have, over the last quarter century, brought our healthcare to this state. When I was growing up, there were medical doctors in all of the districts. When I was growing up, in schools, there were oral hygiene programs, flossing, fluoride, etc., preventative measures. What did they do in the 25 years with these programs? So they have no moral authority to talk about healthcare, right? And I think the Minister of Health made it clear. They left millions of dollars in unpaid bills, and we had to sort it out, right? Effectively checkering the relationship with our suppliers. So they're not in a position to talk to the Grenadian people about healthcare. Did they pay an honorarium to our nurses? Did they talk about the conditions of doctors and they need to address that and improve it? No. Did they say, let's go back to the model of the PRG where we provide housing to our doctors in the parishes and the constituencies, so at least they have subsidized housing so they can remain in the constituencies and people can have the assurance that they have a medical practitioner they can go to at any given hour to treat to them? No. So this moaning and groaning, as you say, the complaining industry, we need to move on. I think we clearly articulated what the opposition is on healthcare, why we've prioritized it. They had the opportunity to do so. They had the opportunity to build the teaching hospital. Did they do so? No. So, as I said, for the 40 years that SGU has been here, the leader of the opposition has been Prime Minister for 23 years. Longer than the PRG, longer than Uncle Gary, longer than all the other NEC administrations put together. And he flies off to get his medical checks outside of Grenada. So he has no confidence in the medical system that he has presided over. So as I said, they have no moral authority to talk about healthcare and the state of healthcare in Grenada.
Right. So we will move to agriculture because it's so important that people understand that the NDC did great many things within the last 11 to 12 months. And in fact, they have surpassed, you and your team have surpassed the expectations of so many people out there. But before I do so, I must say to the viewers and the listeners, remember we are going up to Carriacou on Saturday morning with the Osprey. The Osprey leaves here at 8 in the AM, and we come back after the rally. Our Prime Minister will be going up there and other ministers of government. Remember the tickets, it's $100 return, $100 return. And, if you come with a group of people, you can get it maybe for something far less, let's say 80, 70, it depends, between there with a group. Because, Carriacou is a place where you can actually go and spend the day on the beach, a couple of hours on the beach, go bar hopping, and then you go to the rally and you come and you enjoy, that kind of atmosphere. So again, I want to encourage you, purchase the tickets. We still have some tickets outstanding. Still have some tickets there waiting for you. Give me a buzz. The number is 415-4817, 415-4817. Remember also, besides Carriacou having their celebration and activities, here in Grenada, we have one that dance, unity dance, where we go shake a leg up there in Goa by the St. John Anglican School. That's on Friday the 16th. Don't forget that. $20, reserve a table. The posters, they're all over the internet. Also remember there is a national address by our Prime Minister at the Radisson Ballroom, Krong Ballroom, right? That is soon, I think next week. It will be next week on the 21st?
21st.
The 21st. Yes. And then on the 22nd, we are going to Lasso Jess. Is it the 23rd? We're going to Lasso Jess, where we have the candlelight vigil, we have the prayer, the national, or the day of prayer, not only in Lasso Jess, but throughout the country. But we're going to be in Lasso Jess doing the main thing there. We also have our town hall meeting at the Grenville Secondary School. Don't forget that. Then we have the big bingo. The big bingo, do not miss the big bingo. Please, I urge you, come out there, entertainment, little, speeches. I understand there will be little speeches. Will you be making a little short thing there? So folks, you can expect the Prime Minister and others to be there. Please come out, buy your ticket. You can buy it online. You can come there, buy your ticket there. It would, little drinks and activity. Please, that's the big event. We urge you to come out, buy a ticket or two. Please come out there. Let's move to agriculture.
Yes.
We now have mangoes going to the United States after 11 years. We now have mangoes, ginger, plantain, banana going to Trinidad. It's new markets. Yes, Trinidad, our partners for plenty years, our neighbor and so on. But this is big. We saw Market and Board revamped, and may I add, I only recently went there and it's still functioning.
Yes.
Right? So farmers are selling their produce and they're not complaining and they're getting paid.
They're getting paid.
Right? That's important. Very important. Paid. Talk to us about agriculture, because there's a serious emphasis, not only here in Grenada, in Carriacou too. You understand there's a vet on island in Carriacou, an assistant in Carriacou doing that particular job. Tell us about agriculture. A lot of emphasis has been placed in agriculture. Speak to us about that.
Well, I think Grenada has always been an agrarian society. And I think first we go to our ancestors, because the country was built on agriculture. And despite the fact that there's been a significant emphasis and shift on tourism, which is fine, we need to remember that you have to eat. You have to feed the tourists. You have to feed yourself. And if we didn't know that before, COVID reminded us of this in very stark terms. So food security is absolutely important. If you have no food security, you have no nation. If you can't feed your population, that's almost the first fundamental obligation of a state, to ensure that its citizens can eat, can live. And so agriculture is absolutely critical, and I call it particularly food production is critical to that. But the agriculture industry has literally been ignored and neglected. And I think the former administration and the leader made it clear that he didn't see agriculture as a priority.
Well, in fact, he went further to say, well, boy, my father died poor. He was in agriculture, but he died poor. He used words to that effect.
Well, his father might have been a richer man than him, right? Because it depends on how you treat wealth,
yes.
and poverty. So we know the importance of food security to the nation. But because of this, I mean, the Ministry of Agriculture was essentially decimated. Almost every significant post that was available was unfilled. And so the Ministry of, and that reflected obviously the lack of importance in agriculture.
Yes.
So in the first year, the Minister of Agriculture has had to, and his team has had to spend significant time, frankly, finding the human resource to come into the Ministry of Agriculture to treat with the issues. The second issue is with no succession planning. Many of the skilled persons who have the knowledge, the expertise, the experience would have retired. And there was no one who were trained or mentored to take their positions. So they've retired with their knowledge. As you are aware as well, since Hurricane Ivan, there has really been no systemic or systematic replanting of our spices, and in many cases dealing with our watersheds, replanting of the forest and so on, all of which is important for water harvesting and irrigation and so on. So all of these are some of the challenges that we face. But we are not daunted. One of the things we were able to successfully negotiate with the World Bank was a $10 million US concessionary loan to create a program called Greener's Food Security Enhancement Program. And what we intend to do is to really leverage those funds to help our farmers boost food, livestock production, right? Because Grenadians like meat, right? Whether it's chicken, whether it's goat, whether it's sheep, whether it's rabbits, we have to encourage more domestic production of livestock, because as you know, we import millions and millions of dollars of frozen chicken every year. So we have to make sure that we also build the necessary infrastructure that can help preserve food as well, that can help extend the shelf life of our fruits, of our vegetables, of our fish, of our meat. So when we look at it, for example, if you look at from St. George's to St. Andrew, there is no abattoir. There's an abattoir in St. George's, there's an abattoir at Maribor. There's no abattoir anywhere else. Those are issues we need to address, because you see a significant portion of the population, for example, is drifting towards the southeast, towards St. David. So we need to be able to create markets where people can sell their fish, when people can have access to fish. In St. David's, there's no market, right? Where you can get your fish fresh, you can get your meat fresh, you can get your chicken, your poultry, etc. So we have to provide a lot of the infrastructure support to our farmers and to encourage Grenadians to recognize that the food production is a significant industry and that you can get into it as a private business and be very successful at it. So whether it's in the form of inputs, support with farm labor, support with equipment, the program is designed to deal with all of that. The ministry is also going to embark upon a program to bring in new livestock breeds,
yes,
and to help make sure that we create the nursery environment for those to grow, so that we can then distribute
so
farmers.
I realize they have started that process with cattle.
Exactly.
And that's really good, because I remember hearing people who deal with or who in the meat industry saying, well, look, we have to get it from St. Vincent or get it from somewhere else. And that is really, really good.
Yes. But it's not just the government. There are a lot of farmers as well who are bringing in stock in terms of goat, sheep, pigs, rabbits. I went walking through Minaka. I was very impressed with the number of women in particular,
yes,
who have the ruminants, right, the rabbits, etc. So they don't need to import. They don't need to go buy food. They're feeding themselves. They're feeding the villages, the communities, and that's how you help reduce the import bill. That's how the money stays in Grenada. And let's not forget, you then have natural composting.
Yes.
You have natural fertilizers. So again, you reduce the need to import fertilizers, many of which also have harmful effects on our underground water and our water sources and so on.
As you speak there, what comes to mind is the CES program,
Yes.
where $15.1 million was injected into small business, micro, small, medium-sized businesses.
Yeah.
And we were speaking about agriculture, and you have a lot of people who benefited.
The bulk of the money went to agriculture.
Because that was the priority.
Agriculture and fishing, those are
Yeah.
the productive sectors.
Yeah.
And I think therefore people, you could almost, in my view, feel the energy
Yes.
in the atmosphere when it comes to our commitment to agriculture. There's a lot to be done. The Ministry of Agriculture has also spent some time looking at our land bank, because recall the prior administration had taken an approach of saying they will commercialize government estates. That has been a dismal failure. It has not worked. In many instances, they even leased the properties to non-Grenadians who simply abandoned it and left it to rot. And so we are now looking at creating a policy framework that would allow Grenadians in particular to really get access to the lands, because you can't be saying you're supporting agriculture and then particularly for young persons, because if you're 20, 25, unless you inherit some lands from your parents, you will not have access to agricultural land. So we have to be able to make the lands available, and we have to be able to provide support. We are also happy to partner with large landowners, and some of them already begun coming forward and volunteering, putting their lands in the land bank so that the government could make it available to Grenadians who otherwise would not have access to lands. So I think it's also important. There are a lot of NGOs, Teen Challenge, for example, which is an NGO that basically works specifically with former inmates at His Majesty's prison, but giving them the opportunity to get into agriculture. One, it's therapeutic, but two, it's also productive and it keeps them out of trouble. So whether it's honey production, whether it's rabbits, ruminants, agriculture, all of that are part of the initiatives we will support and encourage to make sure that production in agriculture is boosted. But I also want to talk a little bit about exports and agro-processing.
Yes.
One of Grenada used to be an export-led agricultural sector. We produced in massive quantities so that we could export, and that doesn't happen anymore. And we need to go back to that. We didn't have 20 years ago, 25 years ago, bilateral relations with China. China has, over the last 30 years, been the most successful economy on the planet, pulling millions and millions of people out of poverty. We have a huge market there for teas, for fruit, for almost everything you can consider, and we don't export anything.
And we can actually add value to it now with the technology and so on, with the knowledge that we have. I think it's ideal.
No, and the Chinese government have been partnering with us in terms of training our young men and women in agro-processing. This month, June, several Grenadians are going to China on 6-week courses in things like agro-processing. In fact, for the rest of the year, several courses have been offered by the Chinese government in partnership with us, where Grenadians can get the opportunity to learn to learn food, food technology, food preservation, and various other aspects, to in fact get that knowledge and to be able to transfer back here to their business. There's one young lady I will single out because I went to International Women's Day, and it's the best saltfish I've ever tasted, done here in Grenada.
Yes.
And it's not just saltfish, it's jugfish, it's smoked fish,
yes.
All of that. And she actually said she was in China. She was craving the Grenadian saltfish, and she basically researched and was able to then basically develop her own techniques and her own technology to come. Yeah, she's benefited from the CES grant, right? She's also not going to benefit from additional training in China. And we have fish here in the high season.
Yes.
That literally is dumped because we will not be able to export it. We should be preserving this, turning it into our own saltfish and selling it on the market.
And I have always maintained that the blue economy is something that is not being exploited, not being explored the way it's supposed to be explored, because we can really get things out of there. The ocean, we are still virgin, so to speak.
Absolutely.
We have virgin oceans around us. But let us move in a general sense to look at the economy, right? Pensioners are happy. They meet me every day. They say, "Kem Jones boy, come and take a drink now." So what you give me? Say, "Yeah, boy, you have been advocating for many years, saying that the people who work extremely hard, serve country, should be able to retire with a level of peace and comfort." The former Prime Minister indicated that paying of the pension and gratuity will be his legacy. Well, this is your legacy right now. Tell us about that. What really caused you to within no time, within a matter of months, to pay some $75.1 million that went right back into the economy? In fact, a contractor said to me only recently, "You got a tired with work. People are building houses. Retired people are retiring their repairing their homes, renovating, reconditioning." Tell us about that, the pension and the gratuity.
So, as a law student, since oftentimes, and a lawyer, you watch a lot of these cases between the state and its citizens. And oftentimes the state is a tyrant. It terrorizes its own citizens. It terrorizes its own workers. And to me, this is what this was about. This was a case where, notwithstanding, where it is self-evident that if people worked, that if the law says they're entitled to the pension, if you have the money to pay it, why would you not pay it? It's basically to weaken them. It's basically to say, "I'm the man." It's basically the behavior of a bully.
Yes.
Right? And in many instances, the war between the state and the public workers has been basically an ego contest. I am the boss, so you have to do what I say, regardless. Right? And so when you put generations and generations of Grenadians through this, what is the message you're sending for the next generation? your life is that of poverty. You could work for 40 years, 30 years, 35 years. When you're done, you have to come to me and beg and crawl to get a little pittance.
Yes.
How are you building a civilization on that moral compass? So to me, it was quite clear that, one, from an economic perspective, if the money was paid to the persons who had due that money, in fact, because they've been waiting for it so long, many of them probably had given up hope. They didn't believe they were going to get it. You were going to accomplish two things. One, you were going to restore hope and belief in the state itself. People would believe in Grenada once more, that this was a country that actually valued its people, that would not be terrorizing its own citizens, especially its own public workers, and would give them an opportunity to say, yes, when I retire, I will get me to Kakada so I could at least have a decent standard of living. That's one. Two, we knew that by paying the money, it will redound to the benefit of the economy.
And in fact, you said so.
Right? So it doesn't take having a PhD to do that. Right? That is redound to the benefit of the economy. And what has been the effect? Even the IMF has said that the economy grew as much as 6.9%. That's numbers that China and so on used to achieve.
Yes.
Right? So it demonstrates that if you have more money circulating in the economy, there will be more production, there will be more buying and selling of goods, and that the economy will grow. So the doom and gloom that was preached, and that the entire place will mash up, and who had to lose their job, and we won't be able to pay this, and I knew it was a hoax. We saw through it, and so we had no hesitation in saying to the public servants, it's time to bring this thing to an end.
But remember, the figure was 1.2 billion, then they moved to 465 million, and then they moved to something else. In other words, public servants were afraid, the unions were afraid, everybody in Grenada were actually scared that this thing would crash the place. You go wreck it. But look at the kind of, within a matter of months.
Mamagism. That's what it is. As people say, papi show. That's what this is, right? And I've said this. We have to stop letting politicians papi show us.
Yes.
Right? If genuinely the state can't afford something, you should be able to come in a calm manner and explain why the state can't. Show the figures, show the numbers, show the projections, show where you're likely to go. This doom and gloom, the world will end, brimstone and fire. We need to move away from that.
While you mention the IMF, I listened attentively to what the official had to say, and she indicated that, look, they came here with the with the projection of growth at 6%, and when they interviewed, they interacted with people, they see what was happening in this place, they realize, well, look, things are way better than they thought, and the projection went significantly up. But you know what was even more amazing in all of this is the fact that the opposition was actually saying, well, I predict it will be bad, there wouldn't be any growth for this year. They actually went quiet.
Well, sometimes it's difficult to answer the facts, and the facts speak for themselves. So I think there's no question that the economy has grew beyond the projections in 2022. We are also predicting that it will grow beyond projections in 2023, all things being equal. Barring any major shock or external shock, we expect robust growth to continue, even in the tourism sector. Yes. Right? Because as you're aware, we have made significant efforts to increase airlift to the island, both intra-regionally and externally. So Air Canada will be flying again from the fall. We're making significant efforts. Additional flights have been added by JetBlue. As you're aware, Virgin Airways have just announced inter-island connectivity between Barbados and Grenada. Let me not forget the beautiful Piti Martinique and Carrick.
Yes.
We are about to enter an arrangement that will see additional and sustainable airlift between Grenada and Carrick, because we recognize as well that our citizens in Piti Martinique and Carrick will have to get the opportunity to have tourists coming there, to have Grenadians going there, and we want to ensure that the airlift is consistent there as well. And we are working obviously on getting the night lights in so that we can actually fly into the airport at night in Piti Martinique and Carrick.
It would be remiss of me not to look at the transformation from the airport to at least the Kirani James Boulevard. I saw lights in bus stops. I see, all kind of derelicts being picked up, squashed, whatever you want to call it, and packaged and either sent somewhere. Something is happening. Something significant is happening. The Camahan Park is no longer extremely dark. You see the beautification taking place. Something is happening in the country. Talk to us about that.
Well, We only now start, you know.
Yeah.
As the song said, the journey now start.
Yes.
Grenada is a beautiful place, right? And we have to enhance. And when you land and you start driving from the airport to come up, you have to say, wow.
Yes.
It has to be a place that is manicured, that is curated, that is clean, that makes you feel good. So if you came here feeling down-spirited and so on, when you land and you exit the airport, both from the interaction with Grenadians and watching the place, you must say, okay, this is a place where flora, fauna, where the spices.
You smell the thing.
When
You
you
should smell it.
when you smell the thing. I
Yes.
mean, we can't call ourselves the Isle of Spice, and when you get from the airport all the way up, there isn't a nutmeg tree, there isn't a spice tree, there isn't a clove tree that you can't see. Right? Those are things we have to do. We have to beautify the place, or street markings and so on don't exist. You know, or sidewalks are sometimes beneath the road. Those are things that we have to improve so that our children can walk on the curb without getting hit.
But the NDC administration must be commended for changing the way we pave the road. It's no longer patchy, but it's a long stretch. In fact, there were some gentlemen who were walking outside where I live, and I had to come out and give them a bottle of wine or two, saying to them, well, look, somebody intervened. Somebody said, well, look, you have to do this thing differently. And they're actually doing it differently, and they must be commended for that.
No, and there's still a lot of improvement for us to go. The Ministry of Infrastructure has significant challenges in terms of lack of, we don't have any equipment.
Yes.
You know, everything is outsourced, everything is rented, and so on. We're looking this entire situation to make sure we can get best value for money. There are some things that must be outsourced. We'll continue to do so. There are some things we must be able to do and be able to respond quickly to. Road maintenance. Everybody uses the road. Our roads must be maintained at a certain level. You know, when we build new roads, there must be sidewalks. The road markings must be clear. There must be reflector lights and so on. So that is part of and parcel of what we're doing. I would say, give me 6 months, and come 2024, we will unleash the new Ministry of Infrastructure on Grenada, so that Grenadians can feel proud for roadways, or bridges, or road markings, or sidewalks, the beautification. Because remember, I said we have a best program. We've only now started. We will beautify.
Right.
Really?
I know Kijana might be concerned about that word unleash, right?
I borrow it.
Yes.
I have to make sure I pay intellectual property
Yeah.
dues.
We have
to the
a
creative
couple of
economy.
minutes left in the program to wrap up, and I know my good friend Kim the King will permit us to have at least 3 or 4 minutes extra, and my good friend Spicer Rock out there in New York, you will permit us to have that too on radio. We're actually broadcasting on a number of radio stations as per usual, but let us briefly speak on the way forward, because that is important. You know, we spoke about a number of achievements and things that people are happy, people are extremely happy, but let us speak on what we can expect in the next, well, you spoke there about the next 6 months for the area of, you know, Ministry of Works and so on, and infrastructure. Let us move to the other areas. What can we expect from the NDC administration in the next 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months?
Right. So a couple of things. We will focus deliberately on the question of energy transition. Grenada consumes almost all of its, or creates all of its electricity from the importation of diesel. That is something that has to be reversed.
Yes.
And so we have begun to work with Grenlec in taking decisive action to begin the process of introducing renewables onto the grid. First, let me say, there's the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission. There's been a little bit of loggerheads and tension. We are dealing with this because persons who have invested in solar and photovoltaic cells need to get on the grid. So we are committed to renewables. That's our policy position, and we've signaled that to Grenlec. And so Grenlec has begun doing work significantly on identifying 4 potential sites that can have major solar farms. 2 at the airport, 2 in the north of the island, in Pearls and Simoon. And combined, these 4 sites have the potential to give us as much as 21 megawatts of electricity, which is almost 50% of our current peak load. Of course, it has to be financed. It will cost millions of dollars to do so. But again, it means we will not be importing as much diesel. Money wouldn't be leaving the country. The wind, the sun is free. And we have to be able to harness that, because again, it gives you energy security, because if there's wars and shipping issues and freight charges and so on, you don't have to deal with the significant increases in diesel, and diesel is a dirty fuel.
And at least Carriacou could be a pilot project.
No, it is. It will be. I have already signaled to Grenlec
Yes.
that we need to use the tragedy of the fire. As I said, behind every dark cloud is a silver lining. To look at enhancing and exploring the current solar. As you're aware, there's a solar farm in Limay that is being constructed. We have some delays in terms of getting the solar farm panels from China. So the project was actually scheduled to be commissioned in June. So it's delayed, I think, by another 90 days or so. But I've since indicated to GreenLink that we need to look to see how we can scale this project up even more, so that we can get more solar panels on site, so that we can get to the point where Carriacou is 100% renewables. There's also a site called Topil, which regrettably, again, as much as perhaps even 15 years ago, the European Union provided grant funding for this site to be turned into a wind farm.
Yes, I could
In fact,
recall.
the technical team at GreenLink indicated that the turbines were turbines that could be dismantled in the event of a hurricane. And the government simply did nothing, and the grant funding was lost. So I've indicated to GreenLink it needs to pull out and dust out those plans, relook it, because if we can have a combination of wind and solar pouring Pitimatic and Carriacou, then truly it will also help us enhance and preserve the environment in Carriacou and be able
But Mr.
to...
Prime Minister, without cutting you here, maybe you have to use your negotiating skills as you did with the UKC project that, you know, a particular leader was out there laughing, giggling, gloating. He was happy that we lost £22.99 million, and you were able to use your good office to negotiate to get at least the bigger chunk of that 16.4, I think. It's about 20 million US dollars back. Free money, but it will be used properly for what it's supposed to be used for. But maybe you can use your good office to negotiate, renegotiate to get that
No,
back.
well, we certainly, in fact, the government's advisor on renewable energy traveled to Barbados this week, and one of his first port of call is, in fact, the European Union representative.
Right.
But outside of that, you know, we believe that once we do the work in terms of the research, in terms of making sure that our plans are sound, that we've done the financial modeling, we've done the technical feasibility studies and so on, because this thing is obviously highly technical work. So we've retained a consultant, for example, to do the studies and feasibility studies on all of these sites, to also look at de-risking the project, so that when we go to our partners or friends or donors, they can see we're not coming and saying we want renewables. We are saying this is the site, this is the cost, this is the type of technical work, this is the period we expect it will take, these are the permissions we need, this is the current situation with energy in Grenada, so that they can in fact give us the grant funding to be able to do that. And so that really is key, because if we begin really that transition, of course the aim as well is to lower the cost of electricity, because the single biggest component is this diesel cost.
But your government must be commended for reducing the VAT
Yes.
from 15% to
7.5%.
7.5% on electricity bills. I mean, I saw my bill, because, you know, I operate from home with my operation, and I, you know, my studio and so on, and I saw my bill and I almost fell. I mean, enjoy, right? This is significant.
No, it's significant, and not only that, currently there's a $10 subsidy that the government pays on electricity bills for any Grenadian consuming up to 99 kilowatts, right? So it is this administration that is using its majority shareholding in GreenLink, and it's using its prudent management of the economy. We didn't talk a lot about this, but we took significant measures to address the cost of living.
Yes. $30 million injection.
Right. So you have a situation where we've subsidized the cost of electricity. We've removed the VAT or reduced the VAT on electricity consumption. So we've taken significant measures to ensure that the cost of energy is stabilized. If you're in the UK, for example, I was there for twice in recent times, and when you turn on the television and the radio, everybody's complaining about the cost of energy and the cost of food there, right? So we have taken significant steps to stabilize and make sure that we can minimize the significant impact of the imported inflation that we experience here in Grenada. So, you know, energy transition is critical. Another area we'll be focusing on is transportation transition. We need to transition into electric vehicles, right? We need to leapfrog into the future. And as I said, you can't transfer to electric vehicles and then still import diesel to generate electricity to power electric vehicles, right? Hence the reason why it has to be renewables. We have to build out that infrastructure throughout Grenada, so that the government could lead by example by starting to transition its own fleet into electric vehicles. We have significant plans for these, because we think this could transform the transportation sector in Grenada, and by doing so we can transform the economy. Because you know you can't line after 6 during the week, there's no transport. It's a challenge on weekends. Hotel workers and other workers who work shift have significant disadvantages in terms of getting to and from work because of the lack of adequate transportation. And so we will be engaging the bus owners and so on in several months to start this dialogue, so that we can work out and map out a plan. We've begun already through the OECS Commission to start speaking with potential suppliers and so on who are in that space, who can partner with us to bring that kind of change to Grenada. So
because Barbados is actually going in that direction.
Barbados has led already significantly in that. The entire fleet of government buses have been changed out from diesel buses into
Yeah.
electric vehicles. And again, Kim, with that comes employment, because you have to train persons in that skill set for us to be able to transition these engines from combustible to electric, right, and then to be able to maintain them going forward. And electric vehicles are far more silent than the combustible engines. So even in terms of our own peace and calm and serenity and so on, there's less noise on the roads and so on from that. So that's one area. But I want to double down. We are building this hospital, right? We are currently in negotiations in terms of potential sites. We expect to close those negotiations soon, and once we've done that, we will announce this to the nation. There are some other significant issues that we're working on. I can't let the cat out of the bag just yet. As we get closer to concluding those, and we're in a position to come to the public to discuss what they are, to get the public's input, that will be done. I also want to perhaps conclude where we started, which is public servants. We are working on the regularization framework, right? A draft is prepared, it's ready. We've also have a pension reform committee in place, because we talked about the need for people to have pensions. There are hundreds of public servants who still don't have pensions because they're not established public servants. We are working on that. A consultant has been retained. He will be designing the pension potential pension options for us, so that we can review and consult with our workers. Because if you don't take care of your people, then obviously you don't have a nation. So there really is a lot of work going on. I mean, we haven't talked sports, we haven't talked culture, we haven't talked the 50th anniversary independence. So we have to come back.
Most definitely.
Yes.
Right, so folks, I want to take the opportunity to thank our beloved Prime Minister. I'm not going to call you Baby Jesus here, because in fact, a friend told me that's the mistake the NNP made by giving you that particular name, because it's really a positive name. The previous leader, all the names associated with him has not been positive. So again, see that as a plus. I want to thank you, sir. And
Well,
may I call you sir?
If you call me,
yeah, may I call you sir? No.
No, absolutely, man. It's my pleasure.
I want to thank you for sitting with me and discussing the issues. And I look forward to another interview, sometime in the future. And it's always a pleasure, following what you do. And I see Grenada, and that's just from my point of view, in the next couple of years as being a little Singapore, right? It's just step by step, boots on the ground. Let's build Grenada together. So folks, we heard it there from our Prime Minister. I want to say to the folks on YouTube, Facebook, thank you for sharing. The folks on radio, Kim the King, thank you very much for allowing me a little extra time as usual. Spicer Rock out there in New York, thank you for a little extra time as usual. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye for now. I'll be back with you in the hub tonight at 8 p.m. Bye for now.
This is the Dynamic Hour with Hope.